What are the challenges that startups are facing? Are the funding needs being met properly? Are there new business models that are evolving? Those are some of the big questions we will be addressing on the show today. But before I go on to a discussion, here's a look at the big story of the day, and that is a complete shocker with regard to those industrial output numbers that have been totally disappointing for the month of March. Industrial output contracting at 3.5%, even as most analysts had expected it to grow at about 1.5%. That's clearly a dismal end to a very, very dismal year. We've seen the overall industrial growth at just 2.8% in the last fiscal, a sharp drop from 8.2% in the previous year. And let's take a look at that volatile graph on your screen, showing you clearly how volatile industrial growth has been this year, but also, as we can see, a very, very worrying trend with regard to the economy. And you've got the sector breakup there on your screen, how badly manufacturing and mining have been performing, especially in the month of March, but the real shocker came from capital goods that contracted 21% in March. Joining me to talk more about those very, very disappointing industrial output numbers, Dr. Pranab Sen, Principal Advisor of the Planning Commission. Dr. Sen, the industrial output number, a real shocker, a very, very worrying trend indeed.
Yes, industry has contracted for a month, but you know, these are things that one really needs to see on a trend basis. Now, basically, if you look at it in terms of, let's say, a trend, you're on a low trend. But so I would say that discount the negative part of it, but accept the fact that you're in an industrial slowdown, and that it will take a little bit of time before the economy comes out of it.
Dr. Sen, the investment cycle has slowed down considerably. Interest rates continue to be a big worry, and corporates can't stop complaining about policy paralysis. Are these some of the reasons why we're seeing industrial growth tank so badly?
Well, you know, the issue of paralysis can work more than one way. You know, after all, the bulk of the reduction that we are seeing in the growth activity is coming from a reduction in investment by the corporates. As far as we can make out, the SME sector is continuing to invest strongly. So, you know, there is, I think, a sentiment issue which is getting overblown in the corporate scenario, and that's what we're a little concerned about. You've got on one hand the SME sector, which is expanding quite aggressively, and you have the corporate sector, which is actually climbing back into its shell. So you know, it works both ways.
Dr. Sen, RBI's task gets tougher here on. Inflation continues to be a worry. There's a slowdown in growth that clearly can't be ignored, especially looking at those industrial output numbers.
Well, it's difficult to say because, you know, the RBI has to keep its eye on the inflation rate. And what they've done is they've taken a preliminary call. And when they did the rate cut, they said that unless inflation continues to go down, the rate cuts will have to be paused. I think that's a sensible way to do things. You know, at the end of the day, if inflation has become endemic in the system, then a certain amount of growth sacrifice has to be made in order to bring inflation under control.
Also, Dr. Sen, huge doubts over the credibility of that industrial output data, especially the kind of volatility that we've seen over the past few months.
Well, you know, the data, this is a new series, and therefore there are problems with it. There are always teething problems. But insofar as what the direction that it is telling you, I think the direction is probably pretty accurate. The volatility again is getting reflected this time as well, particularly in capital goods. I mean, you know, I think it's minus 21% or something, which is just too large. So the volatility issue is going to have to be tackled. But by and large, I think the story that's coming out of the data is accurate.
And a very, very sad story that is coming out of that data. Clearly, industrial output continuing to be a big worry for the economy. Dr. Sen, many thanks for joining us and sharing your views. Let me now move on to the big discussion on the show today. E-commerce, has it finally come of age? Let's first take a look at some recent success stories.
Snapdeal.com was launched by Kunal Bahl and Rohit Bansal in 2010. It has over 15 million active members. Snapdeal ships about 25,000 units every day and has a merchant brand network of over 50,000. Last year, revenues for Snapdeal were at 100 crore rupees. MakeMyTrip.com was launched by Deep Kalra in 2000. It entered India in 2004. 1 out of every 12 domestic flights are booked through MakeMyTrip.com, and last year its revenues were at $40 million. It's listed on the NASDAQ since 2010. Myntra.com was launched in 2008 by Mukesh Bansal. It introduced the cash-on-delivery system in India. Myntra.com sees about 2 lakh daily footfalls and sells about 1,000 units every day. Myntra.com has targeted a revenue of 500 crore rupees. Flipkart.com was launched in 2007 by Sachin and Billy Bansal. It created a book retail market worth 70 crore rupees with a daily sales average of $0.5 million. Flipkart.com has targeted a revenue of $1 billion by FY14. 99labels.com was launched by Ishita Swaroop. The website has franchisees in New York and Paris and has a brand network with over 800 Indian and global brands. 99 Labels has created an e-tailing market worth about 600 crore rupees.
Some recent success stories. In fact, the list is a very long one and seems to be getting longer and longer. By the day, we have some of those players, the venture capitalists and the who's who of the e-commerce industry with us on the show today. Let me start by actually asking Rohit Bansal about the Snapdeal story. Rohit, you started in February 2010, is that right?
That's correct.
And now you're doing about 18,000 orders a day.
18,000 orders of products and plus we provide fantastic deals to our customers on great restaurants, bars, salons across the city.
Tell us a little about your story, because it's clearly one of the success stories, one of the recent ones. Do you really think that the market has matured and evolved now?
Absolutely. I think sometimes it surprises even us how fast things have grown. We started in February 2010 as a company that provided great deals to customers on restaurants, bars, salons across multiple cities. From the day to day, when we're shipping more than 18,000 products a day. So, for example, last month our business grew 60% month on month. And then you know that the fundamentals are right when there are so many consumers buying from you. Because take the case of, let's say, a person who lives in a tier 2 city in India. Offline retail hasn't really scaled up. My dad, who lives in a tier 4 town, still needs to come to Delhi to buy a shirt.
Right.
And it's 350 kilometers for him. That's just not sustainable, and there are enough people who have enough money and aspirations to buy products. E-commerce is, I think, enabling them to give meaning to their aspirations, even if they live in a small town where offline retail hasn't reached.
Very important points raised by you, Rohit, especially the kind of market that seems to be evolving, tier 2 towns. We'll talk about that a bit later, but if I could ask Pearl about Fashion and You that you founded. Again, a very similar success story. It's been a little over 2 years and you've got very impressive numbers. There was a general perception about the Indian shopper, that we like to be there in the mall shopping, touch and feel the product, and a credit card is a big no-no. Do you think all of that is changing?
So I wouldn't say it's come of age. It's definitely nascent but growing very fast. Fundamentals are very strong. We in fact are a niche retailer, right? We're very focused on fashion, apparel, lifestyle, and our experience is customized to the Indian woman, her shopping wallet. Right. And when we were apprehensive, one, there aren't like 25% of Indian online consumers women, so we were apprehensive about that. We tested waters, great success. We thought fashion people would want to wear, and like you said, physical touch feel. Right. But I think the ease of returns cash on delivery being available.
Exactly.
These kind of things were fundamentally important to get off the hurdle, and then the word of mouth has traveled pretty fast. Like we haven't even done our first leg of television advertising right now. This year we could build the brand further. We've been getting the
and it's all word of mouth that's leading
word of mouth, digital work with the consumers, and we're finding fantastic response. So that apprehension, and to his point, tier 2, tier 3, definitely the markets to look forward to. Indian demographics, 75% online consumers are below 35 years, and below 24, you've got about 35% users. These are the guys who are going to start earning, and like the big boom is yet to come. I think we're really in the phase where there's been a lot of ifs and buts, but just like there's been a huge amount of euphoria, and it's been great for us. Yeah.
A huge amount of euphoria, Sanjeev, and you're someone who's actually seen this industry for many, many years. What's different now in 2012?
One, the entire ecosystem, Shweta, is different. In 2000, we probably had less than 10 million internet subscribers, and now we have 100 million. You're saying 10 million are shopping on the net.
Right.
Credit card penetration, quality of logistics infrastructure, broadband penetration. So I think penetration on the mobile. So the entire platform is very different. But more importantly, I think 2000 was very investor-led euphoria, because in the West, internet had taken off. So people believed that the same phenomena will replicate itself in India.
Right.
While the rest of the elements were not in place. This time, I think this startup is driven by consumers. Consumers are buying, and teams like Pearls and Rohit's are delivering great customer experience. So this is on a very strong foundation, because if customers are buying, they have great experience, they will tell their friends, they will come again, and then you see the entire momentum build up. So I think services already has matured as an industry. We have in our portfolio MakeMyTrip, Redbus. These are already companies that are beyond the threshold. But I feel that as the inventory management, warehousing management, customer service elements of product e-commerce get strengthened, this is only going to, so we are just seeing the pilot right now.
All right, just the pilot, it's a strong foundation, and it's an industry that is waiting to explode. Let me actually ask Balendu Srivastav his views as to whether he agrees with the fact that e-commerce is here to stay and will only expand here on.
See, definitely we've seen e-commerce evolving, and I've been working in this space since 2000 again. And 2000, when I wrote my first report on e-commerce industry, I actually called it Emperor's New Clothes, because everyone was saying, hey, I'm doing e-commerce, there's a market out there, but actually, the emperor was naked out there. There was no market to talk about, the credit cards were not there, financially, it was not viable to run on the kind of bandwidths that we had at that time. So the ecosystem has changed phenomenally, what we had then and what we have now. So definitely the business models are more robust, and like the previous speaker said, they're consumer centric, they are demand driven, and definitely we are seeing the numbers also come in. Most importantly, travel and your travel deals have already got people working on the e-commerce platforms. So that was the first initiation for quite a few people to get onto the e-commerce platforms. Began by using their credit cards, and now things like cash on delivery are making things much more simpler for people. So I guess the market is more robust, it's more matured now. So definitely there's a lot more that can happen in today's time as compared to what was about a decade ago.
Right, Kashyap, describe to us an Indian e-commerce user, and how does the Indian e-commerce user differ from, say, users in other markets?
So, as many of the panelists have already said, there's obviously been a real shift in the way Indians have taken to e-commerce in the last 18 to 24 months. As Bazi and eBay, we've been watching the e-commerce space very, very closely, participating in it, driving it over the last 10, 12 years. Definitely what we see in the last 18 to 24 months is a definite acceleration of adoption of e-commerce by Indians in general. Just let me throw a few numbers out there. If you look at, measurement systems, internet measurement systems. 18 months ago, the total number of people who would visit unique visitors in a month to all the e-commerce websites in the country was in the 10-12 million range. If I just look at last month's numbers, that number is about 40-45 million. So out of the 100 to 120 million internet users in the country, on a unique basis, on every month, about 35 to 40 million people are visiting e-commerce websites. Those kind of numbers is for real. You can't actually generate those numbers either through temporary euphoria or a bubble. So there's a real definite adoption. On eBay itself, given the kind of inventory that we carry, we've seen a definite shift in terms of two definite trends. Number one, increase in women shoppers taking to e-commerce. We've been very heavily centric on male shoppers till 18-24 months ago, and a lot of the action that we are seeing in the e-commerce area in the last 18-24 months has helped women shoppers, their share on our site increase from a 19% to like a 25-26%. The other definite shift that we've seen is growth of the tier 2, tier 3 and rural areas, largely tier 2, tier 3 towns. Again, the top 8 metros used to contribute to as high as 64-65% of our transactions barely 2 years ago. At this point in time, that's less than 50. It's around the 48-49%. So that's again one significant shift that we've seen in terms of users getting on to e-commerce. In terms of the difference from other eBay global platforms, in more matured markets, I think the Indian consumer has overcome in the last few months significant barriers that are, such as trust. For example, that was possibly the single largest barrier that was stopping people from transacting online. I think that's a barrier that's been, I think there's still a long way to go in terms of the potential that's there, but I think the early adopters have definitely overcome that barrier, and that's a significant difference that's there.
In fact, Kashyap, if I could take forward some of the points that you've raised, but taking forward specifically the trust factor, Rohit, is trust still a major issue really for e-commerce users in India? And describe to us why trust is so important in this business.
See, I think if you think about a person who's never bought on the internet, the way he thinks about the internet is very different, because he's never bought anything online. He doesn't know that if I pay money here, what's going to happen after that. Once he's had an experience, it's much easier for him to understand that, I pay money in a few days, a product would come, they will send me an SMS that your product has been dispatched after you. So there are lots of fears in the consumer's mind before he's done his first transaction. Is the money going to go to... And
you think the first transaction is the big one, and after that you gain the loyalty of the customer, and then there's no stopping after that. Is that the general trend?
To a large extent, if you're able to service the consumer well in the first transaction, then you have the consumer with you for a long time.
Would you agree with that, Pearl? And also let me talk about trust and the whole credit card factor. It's a very unique model we're seeing in India, where a lot of the online portals are offering cash on delivery. Do you think that's contributed in a big way to the success?
So to your question, right, Fashion and You, we have a very high frequency shopper. So we're a flash retails format. Every day new sales go live. So we have very loyal consumers shopping with us 10-15 times a year, right? So it's almost very high frequency. This I'm talking about an average number that we see. So to his point, the first transaction is the toughest.
Yeah.
But after you get her in or him in, really servicing them and keeping them convinced that this is the right way to buy. Because you see, we're like, for example, we're in several categories. When you buy a perfume, your experience is pretty standardized.
Right.
When you buy a sari or you buy a western dress, your experience doesn't fit you, and then what happens? So while we say no questions asked returns, but she's always apprehensive.
Right.
And cash on delivery, for sure, that has overcome the whole credit card issue. But I think a lot has to be done on the payment side for the customers to start feeling confident. But
does cash on delivery work for players like you? Because doesn't it really add hugely to your costs and to the entire servicing? I mean, is it a model that you can sustain, or is it only initially to make sure that you can take care of those apprehensions of the online consumer?
So, with scale, a lot of things which look unsustainable in the short run can start looking fine. fundamentally cash on delivery is something that players will have to navigate very carefully. It's not a financial easy thing to do, right? But I would say that with scale, it should become fine. Having said that, a lot of, Flipkart is doing some really cool innovations on bringing the wallet in. Right. We have to do a lot of prepaid innovation. We've started taking the credit card or the card swiping machine to the doorstep. That is changing the way the customer, now she's not paying for it online, but she's paying for it at the doorstep through a card. And so those things are, a lot of innovation in payments and logistics is happening, and a lot of e-commerce players themselves are building
those innovations,
and that's great for the market.
Deepak, if I could really ask you, the trouble really, what many analysts fear is that now there are way too many players out there. Do you think that the market is getting too crowded, or do you think there's enough room to accommodate many more players?
I don't think there are there's so much room that all these players can come into the market at the same time. The point is the barriers to entry for building an e-commerce setup today has substantially reduced. So Infibeam, for instance, offers an online store where if you're sitting at your house and you just have to manage shipping and pay them 2,000 rupees a month, you can list all your products and they provide the whole payment and search infrastructure on top. And you can brand it as your name. It's just Infibeam on the back end powering it. Or you've got a ton of logistics players now that come in with literally a pre-packaged menu composition that says, I'll do your cash on delivery, I'll do your returns, and I'll do the whole merchandising piece of the pie. This has resulted in a lot of players attacking the same space, and some spaces completely unaddressed. And I look at, for instance, toys. There are not many players in India, or in fact not very few players in India that have actually gotten deep into the toys niche, if you may, and that's a fairly big niche abroad. When these niches also start getting addressed and too many players start coming into each of these niches, that's when you start seeing that it's unsustainable. It's simply not possible for a lot of players to be a fashion, for instance. There will be only 1 or 2 players left in the game, and they're probably already set up. If you start a new fashion portal today, the chances that you will make it out there up on top are very low. But you still see new players coming in, and they're probably eating into the same pie, and there is a segment of that pie that will grow, but the number of players trying to address it is growing at an even faster rate.
Sanjeev, are we eating into the same pie as Deepak was telling us, or is the pie getting bigger and there's room for more?
There is room for a lot more, because Shweta, our entire retail industry is, let's say, about $500 billion, and organized retail is probably about 40 billion. And e-commerce, my guess is not more than $500 million. And over next 10 years, if retail doubles, then you are talking of additional $500 billion of demand that will come up.
Right.
And if online takes even 5% market share, China has 7, US has 8 or something like that, then we are talking of very large numbers. So my sense is that these are very, very early days. While I think there is a first mover advantage, but strong management teams which have a good blend of new economy skills, which is things like engineering, product management, and old economy skills, which is warehousing, customer service, merchandising, which is so important to deliver an end-to-end experience. This is just the beginning.
Is this just the beginning, Balendu? Are we going to see many more players enter this space? Is it too early to start talking about consolidation?
No, actually it's not. So there is a lot of scope in this market, and the niche actually is still not tapped completely. It's such an open market. Mostly what is getting sold are a limited product categories mostly. So there is a product category niche itself that we can work on. The second niche that is that, looking at the localization. So, within the cities, there are still certain pockets which are not very well covered by our online, by our modern retail formats. So there are people who are hungry and they don't want to drive down to some 20-odd kilometers to access those malls and, the kind of merchandise that they are carrying. So that's one opportunity. Other opportunity is definitely the tier 2 and the tier 3, and maybe even going down further. So the niches are there which can really open it up. So definitely there's a lot more room as of now.
Rohit, tell us a little about Tier 2, because you started by talking about how a large part of the market is actually now in the Tier 2 cities, which is perhaps a very, very interesting trend, because that's where the growth really is. But would you really expect someone in Tier 2 to actually believe in the concept of online, given that for them, wouldn't it be much easier to again go and look at the physical touch and feel of it? Why is it that we're seeing better expansion in Tier 2 versus, say, the metros?
Again, I think just as Pearl was mentioning, that cash on delivery makes it very easy for consumers. A lot of consumers in Tier 2 cities do not have access to credit cards or are not comfortable using their credit card online.
But doesn't that make it more difficult for you also, because there are so many Tier 2 cities, and just the fact that you have to cater to so many customers, expansion will become difficult, wouldn't it?
It doesn't actually, because what happens is that a person in Tier 2 cities buys a product, and there is enough logistics infrastructure in the country today which is getting better every day, which can support him getting the product in his hands within 2 days from the time it's shipped from a warehouse.
Right.
Now what that means is that suddenly if you want to buy, let's say, a smartphone in a Tier 2 city, now because there are not enough consumers in that city who want that smartphone, the mobile distributor or dealer in that city will not stock that mobile phone. But whereas if you buy from us without going to a city or spending all the money and time on petrol, you just get it in your hands in 2 days, and you're just paying cash as if you would have paid to a shopkeeper. The experience is so much simpler and smoother for you as a consumer.
And is that the market you're targeting much more right now?
Absolutely, we are.
The same holds for you, or would you rather say that your market lies in the metros?
No, like very much like the other participants said, Tier 2, Tier 3 is where the growth is happening faster and will continue to happen faster. Now, having said that, look, it's not something which is a new phenomenon, right? Like, commerce follows content engagement. 65% of online India is currently in Tier 2, Tier 3. So, I mean, that we're seeing deeper penetration there. There is a ready market. I mean, if you look at Facebook, you look at Google, the usage in Tier 2, Tier 3 is far outstripping now the top 8 metros. So what we are seeing is a very natural adoption. Add to that the factor that these brands and these suppliers cannot with their own retail and distribution networks reach these markets cost effectively.
Right.
So given that, it's a great, we're enablers in between. There's demand ready, we're just bringing the products into the hands of the consumer.
And the real estate rents in India are too high to make retail sustainable in smaller cities.
And that's exactly what all of you seem to be cashing in on. But on the other side of a quick break, we are going to discuss some very key issues with regard to the e-commerce industry, funding, valuation, some of the problems that are being faced by startups, and why 2012 is different from 2000 when we saw the dot-com bust. Don't go away. Welcome back. We're discussing the e-commerce industry and whether it's a bubble in the making or has the industry come of age and is here to stay. Sanjeev, we were discussing some of the issues being faced by startups. Funding continues to be one major concern. It seems like investors are slowly shying away from e-commerce. It's clearly not what we saw much earlier when the dot-com boom happened, when money was really chasing these startups.
Shweta, I feel that after the BPO boom which happened in 2000, we haven't really had any other big industry come out. So a lot of investors had this pent-up demand to deploy capital, and when e-commerce became like that potential poster child, then money was deployed. And I think,
why do they believe that it will not be a repeat of what we saw in 2000? Why do they believe that it's not going to be another dot-com bust? And why are they willing to put in their money, if at all?
So I think, I feel that good quality management teams that are delivering strong customer experience and are not chasing growth in an indisciplined way will be able to attract capital. Right now we are suffering from little bit of China overhang, because as you have probably noticed, the Chinese e-commerce story is taking a little bit of tumble. And that is not because of consumer acceptance issues, that is because of corporate governance issues.
Absolutely. Larger issues.
Which I think the young entrepreneurs in India have very high standards of corporate governance, the quality of auditors that they use and the quality of books that they keep. So I think this is the time when the men from the boys are getting separated, and the men will certainly be able to attract capital. I would also say that right now valuations are ahead of performance. So one concern that investors have is that are they paying too much? And will it be a situation where entrepreneurs will make money and investors will not make money?
Let me get Pearl and Rohit to answer that quickly before I move on to the other panelists. Valuations a key concern, overstretched clearly, and investors are worried.
So a lot of money flowed in. Companies have gone after huge market expansions, market brand building, a lot of spend to get the demand in. I think valuations are stretched. I clearly agree that valuations are ahead of performance. But at the same time, again, the sustainable business models, the companies which focus on the core things, scale, margins, user experience, right? Those companies will continue to get funding. It's the fact that some companies who are going after undisciplined growth and not really thinking about how it's going to become finally profitable are the ones which are going to have a problem.
Rohit, enough cynics who say it's just another bubble. Why should we not believe them? And look at the valuations. Are they realistic, really?
So first of all, talking about the investor landscape, what happened last year was that e-commerce suddenly started growing in India. And I think there were two types of investors. There was one type of investors who said, this is the time. This as an industry is definitely going to grow. So let's find a team which we think can make it happen. And sometimes if you are not able to find the team you think that's going to make it happen, because the space is so huge, as a result most teams will be able to make it happen, and they ended up putting money into companies. But there are some other investors who I think waited it out, and they knew that there's a lot of companies opening up, and maybe just give it some time so that it starts becoming clearer as to which are the teams or companies which can sustain and scale. And I think those are the investors who are much readier today to put in money into e-commerce companies. So that's the trend we are going to see within the year of 2012, wherein investors who waited it out are actually going to back the companies who've been able to sustain and build a business model.
It's a wait and watch clearly by the investors who are trying to study the market. Kashyap, if I could come to you on some of the problems being faced by e-commerce ventures in India. We've discussed that obviously everyone here, at least on the panel, is very gung-ho about the industry. It's a market that's growing. It's a market that's here to stay. It's overcome some of the initial problems. But let's talk about some of the real worries.
Let me talk about the eBay journey. I mean, we've been around for 7 years, and I think our focus has primarily been on scale with sustainability. Somebody rightly said it's about getting the right margins, getting the right user experience, and those are the two things that will actually ensure sustainability. And scale that manages sustainability or balances sustainability is the thing that will help organizations grow forward. In terms of challenges, really, I think, I'm an optimist when it comes to e-commerce. Having seen the way this sector has been growing over the last few quarters. There are challenges in terms of, people being able to acquire customers in a cost-effective fashion, people being able to serve customers in a cost-effective fashion. But again, as with scale, a lot of these problems do get solved. When I really look at the e-commerce action that is going on out there, I think sticking to the right fundamentals in terms of being able to provide value to the consumer, whether it's in terms of the kind of supply that you have, whether it's in terms of the kind of service that you're able to provide, will actually help organizations to maintain this growth. Whatever challenges are there, I think are to my mind something that organizations can learn to overcome.
The Deepak, should we be taking all that optimism with a pinch of salt, given that obviously everyone here is a stakeholder in the industry, but we also know that there are going to be issues in this journey?
Well, to be honest, valuations are something that we haven't really seen come out. We've seen somebody say that, company X was valued at $1 billion when in their last investment, and you take that and say that these valuations are too much, perhaps. I was just looking at Amazon's figures. Amazon was valued at about 1.25 billion in 1997, and in 1998 it was 25 billion in market cap. It was very comparable to some of the big players in India today. They had about 2 million customers. They had about 1.8 billion dollars. $150 million in sales, which is pretty much some of the figures that you get thrown around here. But that bubble took another 3 years to burst. From 97, it went all the way to 2000. So what if it's a bubble and it's early in the process? We have a long way to go before it really bursts. It's probably just the beginning. There's a lot of interest. One thing that I'm afraid of is, we hear a lot about how we're stretching over more geographies, or we're selling to more customers, but nobody is really making money on an operating cash flow basis. Nobody's really making profits. Not many players, at least not. I haven't heard of many. That's the fear that says, well, this might be a bubble because people are not focusing. In 2000, it was about eyeballs. You've got more eyeballs. You're a better player. But that wasn't true in the end, and I'm afraid that we're going down a similar path now, which is we're talking about a number of transactions per day perhaps, and we're talking about geographical coverage, but the profitability is something that I don't see being addressed, and that's the worry that I have.
Very, very significant point raised by you there, and let me pose it to the three players that are here and our other panels. Do we talk numbers that just make it all sound very fancy and very pretty? What about profitability?
See, it's a point which is very important. But
are you making money?
We are.
Okay.
But it's like asking Airtel 15 years back that why are you setting up the tower infrastructure? You have to invest in infrastructure today because the market opportunity is very large, and you need to choose whether you want to be a large player or a small player. And if you want to chase a large market, then it's important to invest today in your infrastructure so that when the market is coming of age, you are right there to sort of make sure that you are the one who's making money, making a lot of money.
Explain to us the business model for e-commerce in India. How does it work? How do you make money? Besides, of course, take our viewers through how a startup can hope to make money in this business.
So every business, like every category, every product market that you take, it would have a slightly different financial model, but essentially you have suppliers on one hand,
right,
enablers like us in the middle, and then customers.
Are there enough margins for enablers?
Exactly. So it depends again on the category. For a mass retailer, let's say I would like Amazon, the very thin margins, right? Flipkart, Amazon. But I'm just speaking as from an industry perspective.
Sure.
Niche retailers like us, we obviously chose this category because they're very healthy margins in this. So one of the panelists made a point that unit economics are not working out. I don't agree. Unit economics are working out for the smarter players, for the more sensible players. You can always choose markets where it's constant losing money and only transactions, but at least I can say for fashion and you, we're very focused on path to profitability, but to add to that, capacity has to be built. Totally agree there that, what happens today, you're shipping out 20,000 packets, right? And what happens when you need to ship out 50,000? Warehouses don't come over in even 2 months or 6 months. Warehouses take 9 to 12 months to even build out properly. Distribution, that we all talked about tier 2, tier 3. To set the distribution network, it takes a long time. I mean, the reality is we are spending for capacity as well. But I would totally disagree when we think that we are not focused on profitability. The investors very clearly want to see a path to profitability. But India is not a 2 or 3 year long market.
What is the average time for an online venture to break even in India?
If you take Make My Trip example,
right,
which is slightly different from product e-commerce in the sense that the fulfillment cost and effort is much lower. You can deliver it electronically. If you think of them as a restart in 2005 when they came into the domestic market,
right,
they in 2010-11 reached an operating break-even level. My sense, Shweta, is that focusing on profitability is absolutely the wrong thing to do. Because if you are focused on profitability, you are then not making the requisite investments in customer service, warehousing. You got to focus on gross margin.
Right.
But everything underneath, or unit economics, but everything underneath which is going to drag your profitability down, you don't want to get too focused on at this stage. I think first 5 years you got to be in build mode, focus on unit economics, focus on customer experience, and then you will find that 5 years later the operating leverage begins to come in, because then you can go directly to principals. Currently a lot of supply in e-commerce comes through distributors. So once you have gained scale, then you go to the principal, and then your margin structure improves. So I think economies of scale will begin to show up.
But in a very, very different talk from what we heard perhaps much earlier when we saw that .com boom in India, where everyone was here to make a quick buck, plenty of new startups, fly-by-night operators, everyone thought this is one area where they can make huge money.
Right. So see, definitely there is money to be made. In fact, e-commerce is one of the most, how do I say, it's the most tangible of the businesses in the entire .com space. You know, not relying only on advertising and eyeballs. It's about actual transactions happening, actual money getting into the space. And the industry has grown phenomenally. It's a $10 billion industry already, you know, growing at about 50% on an annual basis. Definitely there is a huge lot of money to be made out here. So it's really not that there is not money to be made. There are margins. There will be certain margin issues. There will be few initial, you know, hiccups that any industry will be facing. But as long as you are in touch with the consumer, you understand what the consumer wants, you are flexible and agile enough to change your models to get to the changing customer requirements, and also focus on the consumer, changing consumer needs, look at the new kind of niches that are emerging. I think the model will be sustainable, and definitely it's going to show a lot more returns in the near future.
All right, before I start getting in closing comments from all our panelists here, let me actually ask each one of you about your favorite e-commerce site, and Rohit, it can't be Snapdeal.
Amazon.
Okay, so are you an active user on Amazon?
For buying Kindle books, yes.
Okay, okay. And the one thing you don't like about Amazon?
It's very hard to pick because I only buy one kind of product from Amazon. So as a result, and I would say the second would be probably ClearTrip. Yeah.
ClearTrip. Okay, okay. Sanjeev.
Make My Trip and Book My Show.
Okay, Book My Show, you're an active.
Yes.
So you buy all your movie tickets on
cinema tickets there, and all events.
Any issues you face with those websites?
No, I think they are very efficient websites, and the user interface has improved a lot over years.
Paul, what about you?
Internationally, ASOS.
Okay.
And locally, Flipkart.
Okay.
Because I can't name fashion.
Yes. So yeah, Flipkart seemed to be doing really well and has picked up very well. Let me go across to the other panelists and ask them, Balendu, what about you? Are you an e-commerce user as well?
Oh yeah, maybe one of the first ones. Way back 98, 97, I bought my first book through Amazon. But yeah, nowadays, yes, it will definitely be Flipkart.
Now, have you switched from Amazon to Flipkart now?
Absolutely, I have. And simply because the personal touch that they bring, they are really the book lovers out there. And the way they neatly wrap up the book, you know, very careful in their packaging and all those things, really made a big difference. Other side is definitely Fashion and You. So these are the two, you know, big time favorites now.
All right, so you've got a customer out there, but you don't you don't miss going to physically to a bookshop or possibly checking out some of the new releases. Is that something you don't miss?
Yeah, I do miss the smell of the books, definitely, of a new book, you know, at a bookshop. But I guess it's now only at the airports that I'm going to the bookshops. Otherwise, I'm not. So it's really not happening anymore. So.
Kasha, perhaps an indication of that evolving market. Everybody is stretched for time. Online perhaps eases that up for everybody. Besides eBay, your favorite e-commerce websites?
My personal favorites in terms of usage are Book My Show and ClearTrip, in terms of how frequently I use them. Great user experience and you know, always pleasant.
many problems that one may have faced, especially with these travel sites, because remember, I'm told that even right now 80% of the market with regard to e-commerce is still with those travel websites. But do you face any issues?
Specifically to do with travel?
Sorry?
Is the question specifically to do with travel or e-commerce in general?
With travel particularly, or e-commerce in general, either ways.
So, the challenges are always there. So, one of the things that, and let me react as a consumer, is, getting a great deal online is kind of become, a reason why people are shifting to online commerce. And really, I think every time I shop for something online, even in travel, for example, the question is always, am I getting the best deal? Is there somebody else with a better deal? Do I need to check 10, 12 different sites before I get something? Purely speaking as a consumer, but I think those websites that are able to provide great resolutions, for an experience. If I decide to cancel my trip, for example, and you're able to provide me a quick, easy, hassle-free refund, for example, that's a fantastic way to build a loyal consumer. I don't mind paying a couple of $100 more if I feel that this is a site that will take care of me in terms of the user experience that I have in case something goes wrong. So I think yes, there are doubts in consumers' minds, but as and when they have good experiences, I think they will all become converts.
But Rohit, I just want to take forward what Kashyap had actually raised about deals and the fact that an online customer is always looking for the perfect deal. Tell us about the best deal you've sold in Snapdeal.
We sold a date with Gulpanag.
Okay.
Which is really popular.
That was the most popular one. Anything else you'd like to add?
I think some of the best deals that we sell online are very nice buffets in 5-star hotels. Okay. There are a lot of consumers who even today think that 5 stars are unaffordable or have this aura that, I can't go to a 5-star, it may be too expensive, etc. I think breaking that myth and sort of selling deals on 5-star hotels is probably the best deal that we've done till date.
Right, I have all the panelists answered their favorite e-commerce website. I think I haven't gone to Deepak as yet. Deepak.
My personal favorites, at least where I shop the most, are Flipkart and Infibeam. To be honest, I go directly to the airline websites to book my tickets. That comes from a problem with history. I have 2 kids. Whenever I travel, I need my seat assignment done, beforehand, because I'm petrified that they'll put me in different rows, and then you can't handle, kids being in different rows. So they disallowed seat assignment charges last year, but before that I would only go to the airline websites directly because the other guys wouldn't do seat allocation and meals pre-booked. But I love Flipkart, I love Amazon for some of the online books, but Flipkart and Infibeam for India.
All right, clearly a lot of success stories out there, perhaps many more in the pipeline, but e-commerce certainly is an industry to watch out for as far as India is concerned. Thank you very much all our panelists for joining us and sharing your views on this very, very interesting subject. Remember, you can also send your feedback to us on this special show. You can SMS us at WMB space 56388. You can also send us an email at wmb@ndtv.com, or you can tweet me, my Twitter handle at ShwetaRK NDTV. Many thanks for watching. Goodbye.